It's time now for Countywide, a special presentation of Yavapai Broadcasting News. Join News Director Paul David and News Editor Philip Catafamo as they talk with our community's leaders, newsmakers, and people in the know. You'll hear about the hot topics in Yavapai County that affect all our lives. And now here's today's Countywide.
Welcome to Countywide. I'm Paul David. As always, it is great to have you in studio with us today. We're sitting down with Brian Steinhardt, Prescott and Coconino National Forest Zone Fire Management Officer.
You got it.
Yeah, you're the guy that jumps back and forth depending on which forest needs you at the time.
Which side of the river?
Right. I was telling Brian before the show I wasn't sure what I was going to ask him, other than what are the current conditions of the Prescott National Forest. But I guess we know now because we've got the tussock fire down by Crown King.
Yep.
And it did crawl onto the Prescott National Forest as of yesterday, I want to say.
The night before into the morning hours, it made it onto the National Forest coming off of the Phoenix BLM land.
Here we are.
Yeah.
Here we go.
Well, yeah, I mean, the conditions are dry. Everybody's aware of that. If you've been monitoring anything from the Weather Service, we're in exceptional drought, above and beyond anything we've seen in some time now, especially compared to 2 years ago after we had a nice wet winter, we had a wet spring, and then last summer, the monsoons never manifested. And since then, we've been in a moisture deficit, and we're seeing the signs of it. There's juniper die-off occurring all across the area. You can even see it here in the Verde Valley now. It started a little further to the west initially, but it's coming this way. And then now we're seeing actual die-off in the manzanita species, which is kind of unusual. We're keeping an eye on it and tracking it, but looking to get some folks down to do a little more research and give us some ideas on what to look for further down if this continues.
So you're talking about the manzanita. That's a pretty hardy plant. I mean, it can take some pretty serious drought conditions. And you were telling me before the show, you're seeing the old plants as well as the new young ones all kind of suffering down there. And then we've also had, real quick, Debbie Meneely sent out a press release, I want to say about a month ago, about the pinyon pines, the bark beetles back because of the drought, and they like to get between the bark and the tree and eat that. The
cambium. Yep.
Yes, they eat that away, and then the bark dies off, and the tree dies off. And we remember, when was that we saw that last time? Where literally, I remember driving over to Payson on 260, and you could see clusters of pinyon pine trees just dead.
It was about 2007, 2008.
Okay.
We had the same kind of situation occur up there off of Highway 260 to the east of us. It was primarily juniper in that area, some pinyon, and there are bugs that attack either one during a drought situation. And so, we ended up with all the gray skeletons up there that they look like giant tumbleweeds when they blow onto the highway periodically, after a few years. So we have seen that before. It's not unusual under periods of drought to see where you're going to get some die-off because the bugs are then more successful. The trees can't generate enough pitch to push the bugs out because the bugs are always there. They're always alive doing their thing. Whether or not they're successful depends on whether or not the tree can push pitch and get the bugs out and keep it from scoring all the way around the cambium, because that's what kills it. That's the lifeblood of the tree, is the cambium.
Okay, all right. So you break that contact.
So if you go, if it gets all the way around and girdles the tree, then there's no more transfer of all the appropriate nutrients, liquids, so on and so forth. There's a gap.
There's a gap in there.
And that's what ends up killing the tree. And what you're seeing in the die-off now is stuff that probably happened anywhere from 6 months to even a year ago. That the bugs were making their attacks and were successful. You're just now seeing the results of that. So that's how long it's been going on.
Okay, all right. And then there was, and we're going to get to the tussock fire too, real quick as well. But I also noticed that on I-17 north and southbound, it was mentioned by Debbie Meneely, also from Prescott National Forest, Highway 89 between Chino Valley and I-40. The junipers are dying off in there too. When you go 17 northbound, southbound during the day and you look around, you could see tons of dead ones out there. And those are as far as the eye can see. So now we got a bunch of dead growth out there that's just sitting around, and we get a fire in there, and that's going to be really explosive, I would imagine.
It will make things a little more challenging for sure. That's what has me concerned about the manzanita right now, is the die-off we're seeing there, is all the leaves are still attached to the stems. And I went out the other day just to see, is there any sort of resiliency in those plants, and the limbs are just snapping off completely. So they're completely dry. So it's another layer in the fuel profile that's now available to burn. It's going to increase the intensity of a fire. And that's the biggest issue you see in these cases of severe exceptional drought, is those larger fuels, like in our ponderosa pine, you've got your big logs, what we call the 10,000 hour fuels, because it takes such a long time to dry them out. They're already dry. And so what would normally had been resistant to completely burning and consuming is now readily available. And so you get a fire intensity that's greater than what you would have seen in wetter years. And so that, again, adds to that fuel profile being available from the surface to the canopy and adding more heat to it. And so you'll see more intense fires because of this kind of scenario. That's just the reality that we're going to be faced with. It'll be a challenging situation in just a few short weeks in our area. We're already seeing it down south, where the fire that's come up towards Crown King, the Tussock fire, for example, those conditions are trending to the north as far as the dryness. We always dry out a little later, higher elevation. A couple weeks out, we're going to be in the same kind of scenario, though.
Is it happening faster this year than years past? Or I feel like we're kind of, we had fires in January in the Prescott National Forest. We had a couple of wildfires that went over 1,000 acres, which was really surprising for me in the month of January to see that. But now here we are in May, which is June is pretty typical for us for the wildfire season. It's the hottest, it's the driest 2 months, but leading up to it, it's been really bad. So I'm kind of surprised we made it this far into it, actually.
Sometimes you get lucky. Even a blind squirrel finds a nut every now and again. And I would say from that fire we had in January, and that was on my zone, that we were dealing with that 1,000-acre fire, till now, we've been very fortunate that there hasn't been another fire of that magnitude. It's entirely possible that we could have had one.
Sure.
And it comes down to Mother Nature or careless people. And the result of that fire we had in January, that was a careless individual.
Sure. We've had a few lightning strike fires, but not recently, not in the last couple of weeks anyways. We got a few minutes before we have to take our first break. Let's go ahead and talk about the Tussock fire a little bit. What do you know about it? What's going on down there? We were talking it's a difficult area to be fighting a fire, like it's not unusual in Arizona.
No, that is a very challenging area to have to engage a fire. There are roads that lead up to where the fire actually started. I don't know the situation behind it, but I can go as far as to say it was human caused. There has been no natural event that would have started that fire out there. And that's what the initial investigation is saying, is it's human caused. But once you get from where the fire started and where it has transitioned into, that is a remote piece of ground. Even though it's very visible from Phoenix and from I-17 and all these places, it's still a remote piece of ground. It's very hard to get into. People just don't understand until you start walking through it just how challenging it is. It's steep, it's covered with brush. If you're the firefighter that's having to engage that fire, half your energy is being spent just trying to get to the fire line to start to engage it. And I feel for those guys. They're working their tails off.
What are they carrying with them?
It depends on the crew configuration, but your average crew is probably carrying anywhere between 40 to 50 pounds in their pack. And that's just, food, water, basic necessities, batteries, things to keep you going for the next 24 hours. And then you start adding, anywhere between a 5 to 8 pound hand tool, maybe a 20-pound chainsaw. They could be carrying, if they're carrying chainsaws, they're going to be carrying fuel with them. So you're talking everybody's got, a small gas can and an oil can, and it's just more weight. So on average, they're probably lugging somewhere around, in total, anywhere between 60 to 75 pounds minimum.
And all the water they got to carry. It's not like we have wildfire season in the coolest time of the year.
No.
It's always the hottest time of the year. So, and then you got to think about, not only are they carrying water just to drink because it's hot outside, but now you're inside a fire area, which is probably quite a bit hotter than
it's a lot hotter.
Just a lot hotter than it would be if you were just going around. Okay, let's take our first break. Prescott and Coconino National Forest Zone Fire Management Officer Brian Steinhardt is in studio today. Stick around, Countywide. We'll be back in just a couple minutes.
Who doesn't dream of home improvements? Perhaps your kitchen, the real living room. Maybe the bathroom, where you bookend your day. Langstrand Contracting is your one-stop shop from tear down to finishing touches. With 35 years of experience, Chris and his team will work with you to match your family's style and budget. Call Langstrand Contracting today for guidance in bringing your vision to life.
Hi, this is Greg at Verde Solar Power. You know, Arizona has lots of clean, renewable sunshine, and we want to help you take advantage of it with our quality solar installations, and we offer to beat any written offer on a residential solar electric system. So bring us your electric bill and let us show you how solar power will save you money. We're located conveniently here in the Verde Valley and are dedicated to helping the valley go solar. So remember, the energy solution comes up every morning.
Starting in the late 1920s, Grandpa Gettle and his brothers laid the groundwork for what would become a family legacy. Almost 100 years and 100 patents later, Gettle's High Desert Mechanical continues to raise the bar of quality heating, cooling, and plumbing products and services in the Verde Valley.
Call Gettle's High Desert Mechanical Heating, Air Conditioning, and Plumbing at 567-2200 or online at GettlesHDM.com, providing solutions for your comfort. Don't settle, get Gettles.
Welcome back to Countywide. We're talking with Brian Steinhardt with the Prescott and Coconino National Forest. We were talking about the tussock fire and just the challenges that are going on with the drought conditions this year as opposed to last year. And one of the questions I had for you, Brian, is resource-wise. So I noticed that when I'm looking on Twitter and I see the wildfires that are popping up, for Arizona State Forestry is putting out information, the BLM's been putting out information. And what I notice is that the one thing I look for in those tweets is we got ahead of the fire, we stopped the forward progress of the fire. And I noticed that right now in the state, the fires tend to be like that, where you see that the fire starts and a couple hours later you say, okay, we stopped the forward progression of the fire. But we've got plenty of resources that can jump on these fires right away. Is that the case? Do we have a lot of resources in the state? And how key is that to be able to get on a fire that fast?
Well, for the first part, do we have enough resources? I would say, yeah, we do. And more resources are coming into the state on a daily basis. You know, as the rest of the western United States starts to field their crews and bring them on, because they're behind us a little bit. You know, we're the first ones for the fire season for the western states. You know, but as Northern California and Oregon, Washington, Montana start to bring their crews on, which is around now, they start filtering them down this way, seeing that we're picking up in fire activity. So we start staging resources all across the area. So typically we have enough in the area until you get a couple of larger fires that pulls those resources away, and then you start finding yourself maybe getting a little thin. Fortunately, you know, between federal, state, and our municipal partners, we can field a lot of resources just within our own abilities here, and then you start bringing in those outside resources to supplement, and it's quite a force to deal with. You know, we have a lot of capability. It's just whether or not capacity exceeds. Okay.
And then the other thing I've noticed is that a wildfire season always happens in the spring. And it is the worst wind time of the year. It's like a perfect storm every single year, where in May it's just super windy. Like, I guess we've got winds in the low to mid 20s for today, Wednesday, Thursday. But then I noticed Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, like that again. Switch, here we're at 30, 35, 40 mile an hour wind gusts. Yeah. How do you even stop something moving that fast? It's got to be just flying across the landscape, and that's why I feel like, okay, some of the fires in the state have been relatively small, quickly caught, and that forward progression stopped. But this tussock fire, it started early afternoon, at least 2 o'clock in the afternoon when it was first spotted. Yeah. And at 11 o'clock in the morning, everybody around here knows that once you flip that switch at 11 a.m., that wind picks up and goes. Yeah. So I've got to think that that's why this fire managed to get bigger than some of the others have in the state. Oh, yeah. So that first day, it started around 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and just the amount of time it took for folks to get there, you know, there's a delay. Mm-hmm. And it's nobody's fault. It's just location. You know, it's the way that those things play out. And, of course, the wind was a huge factor there, and dry fuels, all those things that we've already talked about. And they did everything they could for that first day. The next day, by 9 o'clock in the morning, it had already started a column that had capped out, you know, reached that highest level and sheared off. And
kind of got everybody's attention, and it gained a few more acres, but when you take some ground resources and you engage them, and then you bring in some aerial resources, air tankers, helicopters, and those things, and work together, that's where the success comes in. And you can put a lot of force into slowing or stopping something with a lot of air power, for example, using retardant and water. But what people need to understand is retardant is just that. It's retardant. It slows the spread. And it doesn't always stop it. In some cases, it will.
Okay.
In some of your grass fuels, if you put enough retardant down, you can actually stop the fire. Excuse me. However, in most cases, you got to follow it up with ground resources. They have to come in and still put in, a fire line and actually stop the fire, because that retardant, like I said, it just slows your fire. It's not a suppressant. It slows the fire, and it buys time for the ground resources to be able to get in there. And that's what they did with that tussock fire on the second day. From everything that I heard from friends and coworkers of mine that are on that fire, is they hit it pretty heavy with a lot of air resources and stalled it to where they bought time to be able to engage it.
Yeah, but actually be able to get people on the ground into it and be able to work on it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's a coordinated effort. And, again, aerial resources are great, but you still need people on the ground. The military will tell you the same thing. They'll bomb the snot out of something, but you still need people on the ground to finish the job. It's the same in firefighting. So
you're the first person that's brought up the retardant thing and talked about it that way.
Yeah,
in 30 years, that's the first time I've heard that. So that's really good. So 230 crew working on the fire. Is that a lot? Is it enough? Do we need more? A Type 1 team also is in charge of the fire as well. Let me ask you that one. What does it mean when a Type 1 team comes in and takes control of a fire? What does that mean to the fire then? So
what that comes from is we have what's called a complexity analysis. And it's a document that you go through, and it has some check boxes and some dialogue to get you thinking about, what is the values at risk on this fire? What are all the jurisdictions that are being affected? What's its potential? How long will this potentially go? And all these other factors. And when you look at that, you start checking certain boxes, and it helps you lead to the decision of what level of management do I need? And so for this to be a Type 1 incident, that first day that it started, one of the individuals on the Type 1 team actually works for me, and I had texted him. I said, "I'm pretty sure your team's going to get called." Mm-hmm. And he was thinking the same thing. And we didn't know a lot about the fire. We just knew enough that, based on location, there's a complexity right there. Hard to get to, remote, a lot of logistical support through a lot of different means. So that's a complexity issue that has to be addressed. You're looking at multi-jurisdiction, multi-agency. It was BLM, it's state, it's private, it's Forest Service. Okay. There's a bigger complexity. You got the towns of Crown King and the smaller outer areas of the Horse Thief Basin, the summer cabins there, Minnehaha. Yeah. You start looking further out, you've got Wagoner over off to the west further. Okay. You've got Cleator over off to the northeast further. I'm with you. If this thing is to keep progressing and progressing, how much more gets involved. So how much more of a command structure do you need to be able to manage something like that? So that's where it comes out. We're going to need a Type 1 team. We need, the largest organization that we can bring in with the most experience to be able to bring all this together and make something work. Okay. So that's kind of how that works out. Other fires, you'll find, they only put a Type 2 team on. Well, the complexities aren't as significant. Okay. And that's how that works.
So if we see Type 1, that means it's a heck of a fire, and we need a Type 1.
It means there's a lot of challenges involved, that a Type 1 team, because of the way that it's designed, brings a lot of those players to the table.
They've been trained for it.
That have the ability to handle all those complexities and bring together a nice, organized attack of that fire, whether it's actually attacking the fire itself or it's attacking the logistics that come with it, the support for planning for everything. I mean, that's where that comes into play. So yeah, when you say I need a Type 1 team, you're dealing with a lot of complexities.
Okay, all right, let's take our second break. Prescott and Coconino National Forest Zone Fire Management Officer Brian Steinhardt is in studio with us today. Stick around, countywide, we'll be back in just a couple minutes.
Terrifying jobs. Bull rider, take 2.
Cliff, this seems like a really terrifying job. Why do you do it?
I love protecting the bull riders when they get bucked up.
How big are these bulls?
12 to 2,200 pounds of pure muscle.
You're not cowed by any of this, obviously. Is there anything that scares you?
Yeah, distracted drivers terrify me.
Two things we can count on every year:
a new set of tax rules and great weather here in northern Arizona.
Jackson Hewitt Tax Service, locally owned and operated by Lewis Rice since 1997, is here for you all year long.
Your neighborhood Jackson Hewitt Tax Office will help you in all of your taxing situations.
Electronic filing is always free with your tax preparation at Jackson Hewitt Tax Service.
Get more in return. Call 1-800-234-1040 for an office near you.
The EPA says C&B Construction ranks in the top 1% nationally. C&B Construction invites you to see what energy efficiency and indoor air quality can be. We have won another Department of Energy Innovation Award, and C&B Construction is the only contractor in the country to win 6 consecutive EPA Indoor Air Plus awards. Experience our zero-energy, move-in ready homes at Crossroads at Mingus.
C&B Construction, locally respected, nationally recognized. Find out more at candbhomes.com.
Award-winning Soundbites Grill is an entertainment restaurant located in Uptown Sedona at the Hyatt Pinion Point Resort. Open for lunch and dinner, featuring fresh fish, all-natural hand-cut beef, even a full vegan menu. Family-friendly, open 11:30 to 9, late dining on Friday and Saturday. Soundbites Grill has some of the best views of the Sedona Red Rocks. Offers world-class entertainment, food, fun, and music.
Welcome back to Countywide. We've got just a few minutes left in the program talking about just fire restrictions, the current fire dangers in the state, the Tussock fire down by Crown King. Zone Fire Management Officer Brian Steinhardt is in studio with us today talking about this. It could hurt me. You're actually in studio with me today.
I am.
It's been a little while. We've been doing a lot of the Zoom and stuff, so it's nice to see.
Yeah, I thought in person would be a good thing to do.
Yeah, it's beautiful. Those of you interested, the National Weather Service every month puts out their fire report on what the month is going to be, and if you get through it all, it's kind of interesting to see just what fire conditions are. So I printed that off for us today too. And then stage 1 fire restrictions. After I got done with work yesterday, I noticed Philip Catafamo put up a story about stage 1 fire restrictions. They're coming this Friday, 8 a.m. to the Prescott National Forest.
The Prescott, the Coconino, the Kaibab.
Oh, all the forests.
The Tonto.
All of them are going.
Correct. The state of Arizona will be in
stage 1?
Stage 1 with us, along with all the municipal fire departments in the area.
So we are trying to keep that all
of us
on the same page,
in lockstep going forward, that this is the time. We've reached the criteria.
Do we know if the counties talking about doing the same thing?
Counties are in board too, both Coconino and Yavapai counties. I was on calls yesterday listening to everybody, and we're all in lockstep that we have reached the criteria based on the science and the information that we've gathered, fuel conditions, and it's like, yeah, we're at very high fire danger. We're right on the cusp. We're gonna hit very high by Friday.
Okay, and the short of that is that campfires are only allowed in designated campgrounds and designated fire rings. Smoking's are allowed inside enclosed buildings or vehicles. Some places have target shooting restrictions, some don't. I guess the best suggestion, I was telling Phil at the bottom of the story, is always check with your local fire jurisdiction before doing anything with the fire. Just call your local fire jurisdiction and ask them what you can and can't do, and that's the best way to deal with that. Yeah. We were talking during the break there that there's not much you can do about dragging chains and a flat tire that causes the rims to spark on the side of the road. Check your chains.
Yep.
Welding and grinding, stage 1 got restrictions on that, or do we wait till stage 2?
Welding and grinding.
See, that's what I mean. There's a lot of
is under stage
mechanics to this.
Stage 1.
Is it? Okay.
Yeah.
So there's just things you need to really check with your local
Need to check with the local fire departments. If you're trying to do any burning on your own property, for example, talk to your local fire departments before you do anything. We've seen a lot of fires that are coming off of somebody's private property because they were burning improperly or whatever the case might have been. But check with those guys. And then the shooting restrictions. Yeah, Prescott will have shooting restrictions, no shooting allowed. And then the Coconino still allows shooting.
I don't think the Tonto does.
Tonto is shooting restrictions.
And there you go. That shows it right there that you really do need to check whatever force you're going to be on.
Yep.
Check their restrictions and then figure out what restrictions are going on in your own backyard as well. And then we've got 30 seconds left. And if stage 1 isn't enough to keep fires down in the state, then we jump to stage 2, which you were telling me before the show. That's when enforcement really comes in. Law enforcement comes in, and we're going to say, okay.
Stage 2 is you're not going to have a campfire pretty much anywhere.
Yeah. And it will probably lead into that, I would imagine, by June, because it's supposed to be super hot. Brian, it was good to see you.
Good to see you, too.
Thank you for coming in.
Absolutely.
I appreciate your time. All right, that's today's Countywide. As always, we thank you for watching, listening, and we'll talk to you again next time.